The meeting is called to order for the Corvallis School Board meeting on December 10th, 2020. If you're willing and able, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I would like to start by welcoming our attendees and those who are viewing the meeting over YouTube. And I want to also welcome our administrators. Let the record show that we have our board members in attendance, with the exception of Director Baker, who couldn't join us for tonight. Also, I want to welcome two of our visitors or attendees from the Educational Service District. And if you could unmute maybe and say hi so we can see you from all these beautiful faces here. Jason Hay, Assistant Superintendent from the ESD.
I don't see there either Jason or David.
Okay. All right, so we might be joined soon by Jason Hay and David Dowry from the ESD. I want to note our appreciation for the collaboration with the ESD and the services they provide to our district. And thank you for joining us. With that, I wanted to start the meeting with the next item on the agenda, which is the middle school improvement plan, which is really exciting work. And we have our administrators here to share this amazing work. So Ryan and our administrators, the floor is yours.
All right, so Nikki McFarland is going to introduce the middle school group, and then they have a presentation to share with you, and then time for Q&A at the end.
All right, so I will go ahead and get started. Lindsay, do you want to start our slideshow? All right, so what's awesome about tonight is that, you know, if you've been at the past school improvement plan dinners, each school has kind of gone it alone and created their own plan based on their own goals. And while there is a lot that's been super challenging about the pandemic, what it has afforded us an opportunity to do is come together as a team and talk about what the work ahead of us looks like. And so I'm actually quite pleased to be here with the team tonight, because we have been working much more closely together than we ever have because of the pandemic. And so what we have done this year is all of the administrators got together and talked about, like, what does school look like this year? What do we know about our students, and what does our work look like this year? And gotten on board for kind of doing the work collectively versus in each individual school. So it really does feel much more like we are one schoolhouse this year, more than we ever have. So just wanted to start there. So my name is Nikki. I'm the secondary schools coordinator, and I you know, support the middle school admin team and our middle schools. And I'm just going to kick us off, and they're mostly going to take it from here. But Lindsay, if you can go on to this second slide, that would be great. And all of our admin will introduce themselves as they come on. So we'll be taking turns throughout the presentation tonight. So our first slide has some demographic information just to help you understand that first column around enrollment. What you see there, the number on the left is the number of students enrolled in hybrid, and what you see on the right is hybrid plus Corvallis Online. So we have, I think it is 223, I'll have to look back at my notes, which are hard to see on my split screen. Yeah, we have 223 middle school students in Corvallis Online. I just wanted to take a moment. The school improvement plan dinner is usually pretty interactive, and ask the board if there is something that you notice about this data as you look at all three schools beside one another.
Hold on, we're getting our participation panes popped out. We can raise our hands.
Sarah? Sorry, go
And
ahead.
now I have to get the unmute button. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the I'm seeing the problem that we were trying to address before this pandemic started with the difference in the sizes of our schools. I also see that there's, perhaps because of the dual language program being at Lannis Pauling, there's a smaller percentage of students there doing Corvallis online than you have at Sheldon. So we've sort of it feels like the populations of students are potentially getting even more different at our middle schools. I don't know if that's an unreasonable assumption to make, but
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is an unusual year. And I think when we look at this data as well as the high school data, I have a lot of questions that come up about like some of the why behind some of the choices of families and who is opting for one option or another, for sure. And I think as we transition to hybrid in person, I think we'll see perhaps our data might tell us even more about how our families are experiencing the pandemic and schooling. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah stole my thunder. The thing that really popped out is really that difference between the two middle schools. The other thing that really pops out here is how our programs drive the populations of these schools, where we have life skills and our dual immersion program in one school and then not in the other. And so that's also shaping not just the number of kiddos, but also the composition of those kiddos and their needs in those buildings.
Thanks, Vince. Lindsay, do you want to go on to the next slide unless there are other comments? This is another slide of our school demographics. The counts here, I think they really count the federal definitions by race, and a lot of our students are counted in that multiracial category. Just, I think of note, school-wide, we have about 34% of our middle school students are students of color and 18% are Latinx. So those are things you can't necessarily see from this data, but analysis of the data tells us that. And equity continues to be at the center of our work in our middle schools. When we're talking about decisions that will affect students, we try and keep our students of color and our students with disabilities and our students navigating poverty and our homeless students at the center of our decision making, and make sure that we're not making decisions that will have unintended consequences for those groups of students. I think one of the things that we keep asking ourselves through the pandemic is like, how can we make sure that we are getting towards something that is better for kids? How can we make sure that school is different and doesn't just fall back into the patterns that have been predictable throughout all the years of public schooling?
Hey, Nikki, can I make a comment?
Yes.
So something that I really noted on this slide and then later with the high schools, I just really appreciated the choice of doing counts of students rather than percentages.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, and when we see student data presented, we usually see it sliced as percentages. And what I really appreciate about this is, if we look at our small, our lower represented populations, we're seeing counts of individual kids, and it really humanizes the data that reminds us that each one of these is an individual kid. And so I just really appreciate that attention to detail and making that choice to choose counts and not just do the percentages.
Thanks, Vince, for noticing that. I think this year too, like principals and I got together yesterday and just talking about how students are doing academically. And again, that's what we're talking about, is down to a number of students, not a percent, but like how is each student doing, and how can we improve our outcomes in our schools. Matt's getting his lights on, I see that. Next slide, Lindsay.
Nikki, you have a question from Lou?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it.
No worries.
Go ahead, Lou.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. I just wanted to appreciate the recognition of the multiracial data, the 2 or more races, and just echo what Vince says about showing that number, because a lot of times what ends up happening with statistics with racial demographics is it's like an asterisk or it's not counted, and that you are trying to tell a much different story. And so I just wanted to appreciate that.
Thank you, Lou. So this next slide, speaks to what I was talking about before, that as we try and improve our schools, we can't keep them the same as they have been. And so while I think there is some research that says during a pandemic, you should keep things as they are because life is hard for folks. We've been talking about how this is also an opportunity to come back and have schools that better serve our students of color. And from there, I'm going to hand it off to Darren, who's going to lead us into the next section. And this does feel just kind of crazy. I'm so used to this being more interactive. So I do want to say, while we can't necessarily see your hands, Sammy, if you can call those when you see them and let us know. I think having this be interactive is a really nice way to do this SIP presentation. So thanks.
Sounds good.
And one other thing is just what happened with the elementary is that a lot of questions came at the end. So I think there's also going to be the opportunity there as well.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
All right, next slide, Lindsay and Darren, you can take it away.
So I'm Darren Blannon, principal at Shellen Middle School. We didn't actually say we were going to introduce as we went, but I'm just going to go with that, and I'll hopefully lead that into each person doing that. The way we put it together is you see our core values, and then from our core values, and you don't need to switch yet, but it goes into our commitments, which then goes into our mission statements for each individual school, and then our key strategies. And each one of those kind of build from each other. And if at some point you're looking through, that would be a great question. If you notice that one of our key strategies doesn't come from our core values or commitments or doesn't stay connected to it, call us on it. I mean, that's the way we build this ladder as we work our way through it. And so I want to just give you that heads up, core values here. Lindsay, if we go to commitments, then it should go from there, which is the next slide that talks about our commitments. And then from our commitments, not going yet, so we have time to peruse through real quick. It allows us to talk with our staff, have some parent involvement, have some student involvement, which then would lead to our mission statements. And when we get to our mission statements, you'll be able to see some of the work that we've done with that. And from there, we can go to the next slide. And then I'm going to hand it over to Alicia, who will talk about how we put them together. And she's going to talk specifically about Linus Pauling, but it's very similar for how all of us did that work.
Great, thank you, Darren, and good evening, board. I am Alicia Ward-Sauté, and I'm the principal at Linus Pauling. So our mission statements, I just want to put this out there. They were probably written about 2 years ago as we thought about this. I think we landed on about 2 years ago. When we wrote these, we were able to center on equity in our conversations and also involve our school community, which included our staff, both certified and classified, I believe some parents were involved at one of the schools, as well as our leadership teams. And so we really, it was a collaborative and collective process in which we brought a lot of people together to really think through what are our statements and what is our mission at each one of our schools. We've really worked hard at all of our schools to center our work on equity through different equity trainings, our equity groups at each one of the buildings. So it's really been a process that we have gone through to really kind of bring our staff into a focus and a perspective that really keeps equity at the center. We know that because of these shifts that we have made in our schools, that at some point here, we will need to relook at these statements and to really make sure that we are reflecting what we are trying to do at our schools and really what, you know, the things that will help us to help all students be successful. And so I think this time, as we look at these mission statements for a second time, we really want to kind of widen the different perspectives that we ask for and the voices that are included. I would say, I know at Linus Pauling, we would want to reach out to students and make sure we have a diverse group of students. And I would also say, reach out to parents and also making sure that we include our diverse families that are in our schools. And so as we go through a process to look at these again, that would be really important to us to make sure that we are holding equity at the center. I know one of the things that we do pretty faithfully at LP is that we use our mission statement to start all of our meetings that we have with our staff. And I know we've done it a couple times with our parents, but I think it just really keeps that that statement at the center, kind of keeps us focused on where we want to go and what we're about. Additionally, at Linus Pauling, we also came up with we statements, kind of commitments that the staff would have moving forward. And that was quite a process. I remember us way back when we were in the building, in our auditorium, kind of with posters on the wall and really coming up with statements that really reflected what the staff felt was important that we could work on together. So it's been a great process, but we will come back and we will look at these again and make sure that we are holding equity at the center. Okay, so let's, Lindsay, if you could go to the next slide, please. So now we will kind of go into our key strategies, and I'm going to start with the first key strategy, which is equitable systems and outcomes for our students. So we have been doing many different things at our schools. Obviously, as mentioned, dual immersion is one of those strategies we use at Linus Pauling. Some of the things that have changed, or I guess we have tried to improve on, is we are starting to offer, I think last year was the second year, we're offering the STAMP test for 8th graders, which will give students the possibility of being placed in an AP Spanish class as freshmen. We're very proud of that and proud of the work that we've done with this program to really just raise the rigor of the program and to give a goal for our students, which has proved to be very successful. It's amazing the work that they've put into this to be able to do well on that test. In our distance learning, we're going to continue to do that. It'll be a little different in that we're going to offer it in January instead of offering it. Usually we offer it in March, in April. And so we will offer it a little earlier this year, but I know they've been working really hard in the class to prepare for the test. So it'll be exciting to see the outcomes even in a pandemic. Another thing that we've been working on in all of our schools is relevant and rigorous curriculum. You are very well aware of a very rigorous social studies curriculum adoption that has just happened, where staff and administrators participated in a process that really looked deeply and really kept equity at the center to make sure that what we are teaching brings in multiple perspectives and voices to what we teach in social studies. We will continue to develop that. You know, in the pandemic, it's been a little, I would say a little challenging in trying to do professional development like we would like to do, but that is definitely something that we want to focus on and to continue to develop our teachers and their ability to bring those different perspectives in. I would also say at our schools, we've been working on engagement across the board in really helping our teachers to see how rigorous and interesting lessons really bring engagement to the classroom and in this case to the Zoom classroom. We've seen some really very creative things that have happened even through Zoom. And some of those things have been project-based learning, which is that next bullet on the slide. That's something that we see as a collective. We see the really need for that. And part of our strategy has been to highlight project-based learning that's already happening in our schools and making sure that that we can show those different projects that are happening as examples to the rest of the staff, and then really working on focusing on that and helping our staff to move in that direction. The addition of STEM and STEAM programs has also been very helpful in providing a class that is very hands-on and very project-based. So that is definitely something we will continue to work on. And then finally, hiring and retaining staff of color. That is really something that is very important, and I'm speaking to as for all of us. Especially at Linus Pauling, that is something that we focus on every single time we make a hire, no matter if it's classified or certified. I feel like we have a real united purpose in hiring. We look closely at our candidates. We think about how will these candidates and how will these potential employees have a positive influence on our students, and especially our students of color at our school. It is proven, we have seen our hires bear the fruits that we knew that they would. The connections that are made, the ability to bring students back to school. I would say in this pandemic, I'm sure you've heard, we have students that are not attending, but I really do believe because of some of the hires we've made with a counselor of color, with other key people of color that are able to reach out in their language and speak to parents, and to also just reach out and connect with students, has been key in bringing some of our kids back into our school. And I know at Sheldon as well as Franklin, that is also a focus that they have in finding staff that can reflect the students in the school. All right, so I am going to pass it on. I think who's next?
Lindsay,
John,
do you have
maybe?
a question?
Oh, any questions? Sorry.
Well, I was going to ask about the stamp test, but then I looked it up online, and so I answered my own question.
All right.
I had that gap in my assessment literacy. But maybe you can talk. Well, why don't you talk about the stamp test? Because if I don't know, then maybe there are other board members that don't know, and maybe there's members of the community that are watching this that might not know what the stamp test is.
Sure. So the stamp test, I think, historically really was a foreign language assessment that was used in many foreign language programs, I would say, around the state and the country. And so we were a little leery about using the stamp test, but as we researched it, and as we had a better explanation, and as we experienced it as dual language staff, so the teachers and myself, we really saw that it was a rigorous test that could very much help us to know which students were going to be or could be successful in an AP Spanish class as freshmen. Of course, one of our concerns is always who are the ones doing well on this test. And we were very happy to see that our native and heritage speakers of Spanish were also doing well, as well, or even better than our native English speakers. And not always, I would say, in assessments we have given in dual language, do we see outcomes like that. And that really is something that we want to keep focusing on in dual immersion, is to make sure that we are serving the students that this program was made for. And so that was a definite concern of ours, but we are seeing really good outcomes, and both groups of kids doing well with this test.
Thanks, Alicia. And thanks for commenting on how you're using it to keep the program aligned to its original intent.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
This is good. Sarah and then Jay. Sarah, you're muted.
Okay, sorry, I hit the wrong button. I was wondering once I love that we're really working on hiring staff of color to support our students and to better reflect who our students are. And on the slide, it says hire and retain. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to what is being done to make sure that those new hires have the support they need so that they stay with us. And we are retaining them.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really happy with the retention of our staff of color at Linus Pauling. I think, I think the difficulty is when you're really just trying to start to hire staff of color, because you don't have that many. And so what's really important, I've found with staff, is to make sure that there's a personal, relationship with each one of those staff, that there's the ability to work collectively and work as a group, to have that support from other teachers or other staff members who may be a little more experienced. And so we've really worked hard to create a dual immersion kind of PLC, or a group of teachers that really has supported each other and kind of met them where they're at, support them with getting the materials they need, making sure that, that we are supporting as much as possible in those one-to-one relationships with each one of them. I would say with our classified staff of color, it's kind of the same thing, is really just, over the years, we've been able to hire more and more. And so they're starting to see a group of them as opposed to being the only one in the staff. And I think that really brings power to that group of folks, and really helps them to feel a part of the staff. We have a fabulous group of classified staff that are working in the classrooms right now that are made up of bilingual folks, staff of color, and they really do feel a part of the group. And I think it's also working on overall the culture of your school, and making sure that they are feeling part of the family. So I think there's lots of different things to focus on, but I think really those personal relationships are key.
And I sort of following on that, I love the dual language program. I have 2 kids in it, but we've done so much work to build that program and to make sure we're hiring staff for that program that reflect the students that are in it. What about staff? I mean, not just at Linus Pauling, but at the other middle schools, staff of color that have been hired there, because not all of our students of color are in the dual language program. They're not all Spanish speakers.
Yeah, I mean, I would turn it over to Darren or Craig and let them talk a little bit about their efforts.
Well, I'll chime in really quickly there. And Craig Harlow again, principal at Franklin School. Good to see you all again. And I would emphasize what Alicia started with in terms of from the recruiting, interviewing, hiring process to have a concerted effort that focuses on staff of color in that. And then again, what she talked about, or what Darren talked about, and Alicia just underlined there, in terms of core values for a person coming in, the ability to develop relationships, to make them feel inclusive, to make them connected to the community, the same values that you have as a board, the same values that we want to fold into as your school administrative team are the things that are going to keep them here in Corvallis School District, I believe.
And then one thing I would add is just the sort of also that district perspective on convening in affinity groups from across the district. So as we continue this work, we know that there are also still staff members who are racially or linguistically diverse that may feel somewhat isolated as we continue to move forward. And so having a district-wide stance around making sure that there's space and making sure that those affinity groups are meeting together so that relationship can be built across the district as well is really important. And so that's sort of a district way that we are working to support the work that's happening at the schools.
And I think one other thing I would add, Ryan, is we also have a team that's working on, and some of the folks on that team, Alicia and Salvador, are here. We are working on like a leadership development opportunity for our staff of color to try and help elevate and build leadership skills as another way to retain staff of color. And we're doing some of that work with funding from the foundation.
Wonderful. Jay, you had a question?
I just had a comment, maybe a request for information. So I applaud the whole stamp test and nudging kids to be able to go up into AP classes. I would recommend all AP classes be wide open rather than teacher recommendation limits or whatever. But my question would be based upon developmentally appropriate, meaning some ninth graders might have a certain set of skills or aptitudes to take AP classes, but not the whole bucket full of skills. Maybe my example would be in math, where really the brain is developing more and more and more. So maybe calculus isn't quite ready for them. Is there an option? I'm interested in hearing, are there options for those students who are really adept at language, but do not have ready the maybe other skills or aptitude yet as freshmen to take AP? What might they be able to do? Just hearing, what the schools have in mind. So just a request.
Yeah, I mean, and the high school can probably talk even more in detail about this, but I mean, just initially, so I wanted to make sure that it was clear that when students take a stamp test in 8th grade and they place in a certain, aptitude in that stamp test, it is only an opportunity to possibly be in an AP Spanish class. So after they have taken the test and we see that they have the content skills to be able to do that, the teachers from the high school, when we were in the building, would come to the building and actually hold interviews, and Colleen Works, one of the APs, would come down with them and actually hold interviews in Spanish to really talk about kind of what the class was about, to kind of hear them speak in Spanish, to really kind of, I would say, assess the students' readiness to be in an AP class, because the last thing we want to do is to put them in a class where they won't be successful. And I think, I don't know, Colleen could probably talk a little bit more about the success rate, but I would say we are being very careful with that because, Jay, we recognize that not all students are ready to take an AP class as 9th graders, but what we've really felt strongly is we don't want to hold kids back either. We want to make sure that if they are ready to go and they are able, they've been in this program now for what, 9 years by the time they hit freshman year, we want to make sure that if they're able to do that, we want to give them that opportunity to do that. And so, but I think that's a really good point to make.
And I think you'll hear a little bit more about the efforts that have been taking place around AP tonight. Jay, Paul's going to speak to our EOS program, or Equal Opportunity Schoolwork, when the high school presents their SIP. So that will be an opportunity to hear some more, without a doubt.
Can I jump in for a minute to talk a little bit about how the schooling works? I'm an assistant principal at CHS and I work with the DI program. Hi, Jay. Hi, everyone else. So I can second everything that Alicia says, and I think it's more that we are recognizing the achievement of students than that we are pushing students, right? That we are working throughout the DI program, K-8, to really raise the rigor and to raise the challenge for students. And then we're recognizing when they achieve that. I think the other two things I'd say that tie in, one, to go back to the hire and retain staff of color, the teacher that we have teaching that AP level is absolutely phenomenally amazing, native Costa Rican, and just works beautifully with students. And the success rate last year was almost 100%. Then I think the other piece that that I would tie into that is that we are sort of flipping that AP model on its head to some extent, because what we're looking at less is, are the students ready with all the skills to be successful in that AP class? Looking less at that, although that's clearly a piece, and looking more at what can the class do? What can the teacher do? What can we do with the curriculum that in fact helps all students elevate to being successful in an AP class, all of those students that have been identified. So we flip that model a little bit. There's a lot more reaching by the curriculum, by the teacher, by the teaching strategies to elevating students so that they do have the opportunity to be successful.
So this is a great example of how we used to do SIPs by individual schools, and how you've seen when the elementary presented, how you saw the collaboration, and you're seeing the same thing between our middle schools and high schools, and across our middle schools tonight. So again, I think that as we think about these school improvement plans moving forward, year to year, I think that there's things that we're learning about how the integration is seen differently when we go about it this way. So I think there's more to decide later around board development and the way we do these meetings. But generally speaking, I think it's really neat for us to be able to see that articulation happening.
Absolutely, the synergy and how every administrator from different sides of the different locations of the district are speaking to these issues. It's just amazing to see that. So really a great highlights we're seeing this year, because we're talking all together at the same time, or at the same, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So with that, I want to say we don't have further questions, and I would say let's keep our questions toward the end, since I want to give enough time for our staff to present all what they want to present, and then I'll ask our questions, if that's okay.
Okay, then let's see. I'm not sure who's next. Sorry.
I am. Good evening. And we can go to the next slide.
Oh, there we go.
Good evening. I'm Greg Hyde. I am one of the 2 assistant principals at Linus Pauling Middle School. So we've done some recent work on math placement for students entering middle school, as well as grading practices. And so there's been collaboration between teachers and administrators at the middle schools to create supports for all students towards successful completion of Algebra 1 by the end of 9th grade. We know that's a really important indicator towards earning a high school diploma in 4 years. We've also increased opportunities for students of color to accelerate their math learning and complete Algebra 1 before they get to high school. Around grading, we've advanced our equitable grading practices. Some of the examples would be removing behaviors from the grade, unweighting practice assignments that do not inform instruction or learning, and raising the floor of missing assignments from 0 to 50% on the 100-point scale. So that's some of the collaborative work that we've been doing. And if there aren't any questions, I'll pass it on to John.
See how you did that, Greg? That was perfect. All right, I'm John Trowbridge, assistant principal now at Sheldon Middle School. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I might have to, turn off my camera for a second and run back, but no, I'm joking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the next slide for us, Lindsay, please. I'm actually really excited to talk about this. Alicia did touch on our equity being kind of our core. And I think we are at the point, and I'm thinking even about our employee retention, Sarah, that you asked about that. And I think some of that is really with the equity drive that we have within our district. Definitely at our schools, our staff are really highly engaged. They are actually the ones that are leading the PD now. They are the ones that are leading other teachers. And then they are working together collaboratively to go into the classrooms and work together to also teach the students about equity. One thing that we're doing at Sheldon, and there's something similar at LP and Franklin as well, is speak up. And really what that is speak up for equity. And that's just to give students empowerment when it comes to equity and really allow them to use their voices and use their experiences for other people to be able to see some empathy there as well. That has been pretty powerful. We've been really focusing, at least at Sheldon, specifically on identity as kind of our foundation as we move forward. Alicia also talked a little bit about the increased collaboration. I was going to talk a little bit about, the social studies, but I know that there has been a lot of talk of that already. I will just say that one of the big focuses, and I think we can thank our district leadership, is having that focus on the instructional materials by people of color or seeing themselves within the material, which we know traditionally in our social studies curriculum, it has been about a white man. And so changing that narrative and allowing our students to see themselves within the material is going to be really powerful for them moving forward. Some other things that have happened, our library's really been trying to promote authors of color, followed by buying some books. I think there was a grant going through the foundation, if I'm not mistaken. I might be. It is foundation, right? Thank you, Nikki. So that's pretty awesome to see. Lastly, the phased in limited in-person instruction. We have started this at our buildings. I think this has been one of the most powerful things we've been able to do as we move forward. We really focused on our students with disabilities. We focused on students that are not able to access learning independently, our ELD students, and students with some tier 3 supports. And that is a lot of work. And I think given a lot of us purpose in such a interesting time. And I felt very lucky to be able to be part of that, to kind of move forward and get our kids that really need the support in. And it's also helped our teachers as well. I will take any questions if there are any.
We were told to hold our questions.
That's perfect. Love it.
Yeah, I think it's better to hold
At the
them.
end?
Yeah.
All right. So next.
I'm doing my best too.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Next, we have Lisa Krause.
Thank you, John. I have a very temperamental microphone on this laptop, so just let me know. Somebody give me a signal if you can't hear me. But I'm going to talk about a few key strategies that we're all working on. So I would say we've learned a lot since we started distance learning about 100 years ago. And I'm really grateful that there were the 6 of us from the 3 schools walking together down this path. All 3 schools have created plans that fit their individual schools, but there are many common threads, I would say, that were woven throughout the plans. And I would also say, and you've heard it before, we've shared more ideas among the 6 of us in the last 6 months than likely has been shared in 6 years. So I'm very grateful for that. We knew from the start that outreach to students and families had risen to the top in terms of importance. We have counselors, we have behavior specialists, we have teachers, we have educational assistants and administrators who all make home visits. And this is what we call knock and connect. And if families happen not to be at home, we leave a little door hanger with a personal message to the families. And for some families, it takes 2 visits before the student becomes a little bit more engaged. Sometimes it takes 3, and sometimes it takes 4, but we know if it takes 10, we'll do 10 or 20, whatever needs to happen. We have had a measure of success here that we're pretty pleased about. I would say all schools have developed elaborate systems that help us track students. Initially, it was in attendance and then engagement, and now we're really turning towards our academic side and putting some teeth into that. We have tiered systems of support to check up on students at all levels. We also have principal chats via Zoom, and I'm going to tell you that at Linus Pauling, our first principal chat, we learned one thing that's very important: turn off the chat until after the presentation. We went through 9 pages of questions afterwards. And secondly, on that list, we have improved collaboration with our classified staff and the capacity for one-to-one academic support and connection. If there's one positive about comprehensive distance learning, it's that our classified staff has been made available to assist students more than ever before. Because they do not have supervisory duties throughout the day, they're able to support students in classes. They're able to support students before classes, after school and homework clubs. Their work has been overwhelmingly supportive, and they are doing a wonderful job. Lindsay, if you want to go ahead to the next slide, I'm going to talk. I don't know if did we get the Nikki,
I sent Lindsay, Lindsay, I sent you a message about making sure you had the updated one. I know that we submitted something to the board, but I think
it's okay. I can work off of this one. That's
I think some changes were made to just make the data a little more digestible and easier to read and comparable. So yeah, I think if you can go ahead with this one.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. So one of the things we asked our Linus Pauling students, and we're stepping into a little bit of a different phase here. Each school will talk about student voice and student perspective, which is particularly important to all of us through these unusual circumstances. So what we wanted to know about our students is how they were doing. And so the question that was posed is, we know this is a different way of learning, and we're so proud of all of your hard work. On a scale from 1 to 5, how are you doing with distance learning? And so this particular slide that you're looking at was one that we sent to students at the beginning of October. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous about what we would see. 1 being, this is hard and I'm struggling, versus 5, I've made this work and I feel pretty successful. I guess I didn't know what to expect, or administrators didn't know what to expect. So we felt okay with this because we knew that there had been any number of technical issues that had come up, and students were falling into really a different phase of comprehensive distance learning compared to the spring. The spring, it was care and connect and making sure everybody's good in their shoes. And now we are sinking in for a longer stretch of comprehensive distance learning. So as we took a look at that, we gave them those questions. And then Lindsay, if you want to flip to the next slide. So of course, again, I'm a worrier, and I thought, what is this going to look like? We posed the same questions to kids, and this is how they responded. And it's almost the very same as the first slide. a few more, I believe, I can't remember the percentage in one than previously, but in the end, it's very, very close. And I think we will probably run a third one in January, probably late January, where we will actually we will have who the students are who are in 1 and 2, so that we can make sure that if we aren't helping them already, that we would be able to help them directly. I think it's going
You
to
can
be
throw it to
Aaron
me,
that's up
Lisa.
next.
Yep. So what we did was we had a survey for kids and we dug a little bit deeper and asked them more specifically to tell us about, you know, as you can see here, most days are good, some days good, some not as good. And then it works its way down. The thing that I would point towards is that we have 13% of our kids that are kind of in the bottom 2 categories. Yes, that was a percent, Vince. So let me tell you, 35 people that are at most days not so good, and 22 people that are a lot of bad days. And so when you look at it, you think, well, 13%, that's not bad, or 8% and 5%, that's not bad. But that means we have 57 people that are feeling that most days are worse than the other days. That doesn't feel good, right? And so we use some of this information to key in on our limited in person to go, okay, we need to get those kids in here because what they're doing right now is not feeling good for them. So how can we get them in the building? How can we help them build relationships? How can we get them away from whatever they're having that is making them feel that way? And we'll continue to do that as we grow. We've also taken it with that individual data to be able to, for the parents who have declined, unfortunately that's happened with some, we've gone, okay, well, what can we do? So we've had some study halls that we've created on Wednesdays, and we had kids who will connect to that, virtual study halls, and they'll be able to still be able to do that without coming in the building. Same as what Lisa shared, we'll go back to this. We only have our data right here that is the most recent. We did it at the beginning and then we did our most recent. We'll do it again in January. And one of the things we'll key in on is not only our overall percentage, but looking at the 57 kids who previously put that they were either most days or not going well or a lot of bad days, and see if the limited in person or the study halls, if that helps change kind of their response or their answers, and helps them kind of move towards feeling better. Because obviously as we measure kind of success or how the days are, it's totally different than we ever have in the past. And so there's some kiddos that are filling out this data that look like, based on attendance and grades, like things should be going well. They come every day and they do what they're supposed to, but they're more compliant than they are actually doing well and really having overall success, both academically and mental health part of it. And so we use this data to help determine where we go on how to support kiddos. And from here, I'll throw it over to Craig.
Thank you, Darren. I think we might be the next slide, Lindsay. Oh, there we go. So very similar to what you've heard from both Darren and Lisa on the previous 2 surveys. This is a snapshot. Jamie Luke, our social studies teacher, does this for the team, for the middle school team at Franklin. And it was very similar to the first one. And in a practical sense, we use this at the middle school SST to what Lisa was talking about earlier in the slide, how to support students in the social, emotional aspects of navigating all of this with our specialists, counselors, myself, and district-wide supports. And then big picture-wise, the team uses this. And what stands out to me in this is, Darren just referenced this, the good news is we see our middle school students, their attendance is up from their activities and projects. Their engagement is up as compared to distance learning, the framework of distance learning last spring. What you also see, though, is my perspective of this is how challenging comprehensive distance learning and online learning is for a middle school student in general. That social connectivity piece and the construct of that embedded in their educational experience in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is absolutely vital. And just the actual framework of being in person for their learning is gives them guidance and framing and stability as they navigate the day. So that is our challenge. Next slide, please. And we will finish our presentation with this quote for you from Paulo Freire, a champion of social justice, as you know. Looking at the past, whoops, sorry, I can only see part of it on this. Looking at the past must only be a means of understanding more clearly what and who you are, so you can more wisely build the future. So thank you very much, and I'll send it back to either Sammy or Ryan.
Well, I want to say thank you, team. You've shown tremendous amounts of synergy and collaboration that our students are the most beneficiary of. So thank you for this work and really doing the hard work that you're doing. And I do have a few questions that we want to go for. And we'll start with Sarah, and then Vince, and then Jay, and then Lou. Sarah?
Yeah. Well, I have two questions. One of them is just a pretty easy yes or no question. So that the surveys of students, does that include kids in the Corvallis Online, or is that kids only in the hybrid?
For Franklin School, that was the students in the Franklin High Comprehensive Distance Learning Online program.
That would be the same for Linus Pauling.
So that's the Corvallis Online.
Correct.
Do we have any assessment of those kids and how they're doing?
I would say we have regular conversations with Mark, who is the admin for Corvallis Online, where we talk about individual students. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just echo that, Lisa, like we've staffed students, individual students at our SST for middle school via Mark, keeps us really informed on that piece.
That's been an intentional decision we've made to make sure that students still maintain that connection with their home schools. So we had some conversations earlier in the year. Do we create a separate structure for Corvallis Online, or do we continue to support students through their home school where they have those relationships built over time? And so that's how we have structured that.
Yeah, because I just didn't want to, I wanted to make sure we weren't missing kids over there. And then my other question is just, how is everyone doing? This was my question for the elementary school teachers too, because I've been watching, from the parent side, the heroic work that's being done by teachers. And how are you and your teachers doing? How are supports going so that we don't burn out all of the fabulous people who are supporting our kids right now?
Well, I would say that's, that's definitely, I mean, I think in any year in your building, right, you're creating culture, you're creating, community. But I would say in this situation, I think for me, at least as a principal, it's been an ongoing kind of learning about what really we need to do to help our staff. I know, there's been, middle school is middle school, so we're all a little silly. And so there's been a lot of great, from, doing a virtual Secret Santa to, sending pictures of yourself dancing, to lots of different things that I think creates community, even though it's just little things like that really generated by our staff. Our counselor, one of our counselors and our Dean of Students next week will have an afternoon kind of trivia game about our staff. And so we're trying to get some ideas flowing to really try to get staff because they also miss the whole relationship part of it. And so trying to create different activities for them to do. And of course, us as administrators reaching out to our staff that we're in charge of and making sure that things are going well and checking in with them frequently. And but I would say overall, I mean, it's not easy. But I'm very every day I'm very much proud of the many things that our staff are doing and really how they're just hanging in there. And what, it's 6 days until we have a little break here. So not that I'm counting or anything, but so I think that will also help.
All right, Vince.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Sarah for asking that question, because I know our staff and our teachers are working hard. And if there's anything that we've learned about this pandemic and the policy response to it, is that change is a constant. So just as we're starting to settle into CDL and things are starting to really work, I'm sure that something will come and we'll have to change. Maybe we'll get back into buildings. I'd like to go back to the survey data though. And the note that I made for myself as I was reviewing the packet was, did we slice this data by student group? Are there any patterns? What are those patterns? And really the question is, are they any different than what we would expect? Is there any learning that we got from that when surveying that data that popped out about our student groups?
Can I jump in a little bit on that one, Vince? I would say sorry, I asked you a question, didn't let you answer because I'm just going, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
I would say it depends on how you look at it for were you surprised. I mean, the thing that is different is that our students that typically worry me are, for lack of a better term, are loners, are kiddos who don't have a group, who don't have a connection. They're doing pretty well right now. Because that's the world we're all living in. And so there's been a little bit of a flip, and not all of them, but there's been a little bit of a flip that our social butterflies and our kiddos that usually have those connections, those are the ones that are giving us feedback as far as our surveys that we're seeing that are really struggling because they don't have that same connection they usually get from walking around the halls, from being involved in 5 different clubs, from going to their athletics, from athletics to band to this to that. Those are the ones that are scaring me, right? That I'm like, how do I remake up those types of things for them to have those connections? And so that's where I would say that in some ways it's a surprise. And that's what I shared previously, where I still can look up those kids and they still probably, most of them I see are at 98% attendance and are getting all A's and B's because they're compliant. So they're still doing what they need to, but then all of a sudden they report most days not good. And I'm like, wait a second, most days not good, but you're here 98% of the time and you have all A's and B's. So that's why I'm saying sometimes at this point, not sometimes, we have to define success in a different way and make sure that we're pulling data and information in ways that we never have before. So.
Thanks for that, Darren.
Wonderful. Jane?
If I could respond to that too, I would say in our survey, we cannot extrapolate who is whom among the students who replied. The surprise for me was to see virtually the same number, the same percentages or the same numbers. I was surprised by that, only based on the fact that I know and we see and we reach out to many families and many students. And so based on that, I was thinking that the numbers would be much higher of kids who are really struggling. I didn't mention it before, but I do want to mention that one of the other things, another survey that our counselors put out was they asked students what social emotional learning subjects they would be interested in learning about. And they got some, I think, 500 responses. And after reviewing the results, the counselors created Canvas modules for those students who wanted to learn about healthy relationships, healthy friendships, anxiety, and exercise. And so they created online, like an online counseling class to work with students. And there are, I think my counselor said there are 75 students who are participating in that. So it was a means for them to reach out and to say, yes, I would like help with this. So I felt like that was a great success on their part.
Thanks for both those responses. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this staff and about this district is how how quickly I can talk about groups and talk about overall data, and this team very quickly goes to talking about individual students and individual student needs. And I just really appreciate that approach, and just that's kind of your default setting.
Thank you, Jay, and then Lou, and then Therese. And just to make sure we can give the high school admin sufficient time to present, I'll say we have 7 to 8 minutes to answer the 3 following questions. So Jay?
So I want to first say, as a matter of comment, thank you, because Knock and Connect and Principal Chat and just the tone that you all have about collaborating with each other, and then finally just your caring tone, it's big. And so thank you. My question goes to the surveys, and it seems to me, my quick math is a little nervous about how many people did not respond. And I'm going to assume that if they didn't respond, we might want to assume the worst. And that may not be fair, but can you give me a comment about, I mean, I'm counting at Linus Pauling maybe as many as 200 non-responders, or maybe at Franklin 50. Am I missing something? Are those onliners instead? Or help me out with that gap.
No, oh, go ahead, Lisa.
So my thinking here is that it was offered at the end of a class period, and then students were told, here is a survey we would like you to take. And whether or not the students, said, I don't want to take it or whatever, I don't know. We did have fewer students taking the survey the second time, we realized that. So I think we'll refine that survey. Jay, we do know we have a number of kids we're working with on a daily basis. And whether they responded to that or not, I don't know, but we will get individual email addresses once they respond to the next survey.
Thank you.
Yeah, just very similar, Jay. It was given to Ms. Lucas kind of a virtual optional check-in. So it varied a little bit from the first one to the second one. And we could probably emphasize it more to get a better participation turnout.
I want to comment, as soon as you said how you delivered them, I want to go back on my statement that I assume the worst. I assume that middle schoolers want to go home, get off, do something else, and they may not really have negative comments. So I just think it's a gap. So thank you for clarifying that.
Awesome. Lou?
Thanks everyone for all the info, and really quick, I wanted to say how awesome that those modules are that the counselors put together. That's pretty incredible. So thanks for sharing about that. I did have a couple of questions. One of them goes back to retaining staff of color, and I'm just kind of a little bit curious about what is being done for white staff for education about microaggressions to help retain, because a lot of times the focus is on the support for staff of color, and so I'm just kind of curious about the other part of the picture of like the education for white staff. And then my other question, I was really excited to see a pedagogy of the oppressed quote as a closing slide. And I'm wondering if you all are using any of the other kind of philosophies in that text or that approach to think about creating changes post-COVID, and if that's being used at all as a framework, or if it was just for the presentation, which is fine too. I was just curious.
I can jump in unless Alicia, you want to go?
No, John, you go. That's fine.
Because I can just speak a little bit to the microaggressions that you were talking about. The way I see it is we had done a lot of equity work as a district, sending teachers out to trainings and stuff like that and actual professional learning. And now they have taken that. So when I talked about the speak up, one of the things they actually talk about to students is that as well. And before they do that, they talk about it as a group of teachers. So I think there's that opportunity there where our teachers are talking about it actually right now, because that is a focus. If we are going to serve our students, especially our students of color, we need to identify that ourselves. So I think that is happening.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quickly. I mean, I think both schools, aren't we working on the book How to Be an Anti-Racist? So I think at Linus Pauling, there's been work that we've been doing probably for the last 2 or 3 years, working with staff specifically around equity and you know, and it is a different dynamic having you know, more and more staff of color every year in our staff. It's very interesting because they bring a perspective to the conversation that I think you would not get if you didn't have them there. And I do think specifically talking about microaggressions, I will say that was on my list to do this year and we haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm glad you brought that up because that is definitely something that I think we need to talk about. But we have done a variety of different things, and Lisa is leading our book study with How to Be an Anti-Racist, which I think has 25 staff I think that have signed up to do that, and so that's and I believe at Sheldon they're also doing something similar to that, and so that is very encouraging. And I really do think it's a process. It's also a process around, and I would say the three of us have had individual conversations with staff around just, you know, maybe framing things in a different way, or have you thought about this in a different way? And so I think that continual teaching, like, you know, that's what we are. We are all teachers at the core, and I think the continual teaching and giving examples and working with staff is really how we can move people along. And I've seen a lot of improvement at what happens at Linus Pauling. But I think that's a really good point that I don't want to be lost, because that is part of it for sure.
Thanks. I appreciate you all saying what's happening and what's been happening. I think it's important for like community to know that education happens on both sides, because sometimes there's an assumption it only has to happen to support the staff of color directly with staff of color. So thank you so much. And I don't know about the other question though.
I can speak to that question. You know, just the pedagogy of the oppressed talks a lot about affirming individual identity. And while that's not a text that we work with staff from, we use Retta Hammond's book, and we use How to Be an Anti-Racist, which I think are really about knowing the identity of the students you're working from, and getting to know them and connecting with them and building relationships so that students can learn from that. So I think those are some of the more recent works that build off of that earlier work that our teachers are using for professional learning.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, that text in particular too talks a lot about like shifting structures and stuff that's not found in other stuff. That's why I was kind of curious of that part, but thank you so much.
Wonderful. I see, Teresa, your hands are down. So unless you have a question, raise your hand or unmute. Otherwise, I'll take your spot. Go ahead.
My question got addressed already. So I'll just only add that I appreciate it. I think it was Darren who commented about the shift in seeing who was thriving and who wasn't, and those extroverted social butterfly kids struggling maybe a little bit more in this environment. And I just appreciate that that awareness. I have one of those children, and it is it's painful to watch that process unfold and to realize that the coping mechanisms that would be in place in normal times are exactly what we cannot do right now in so very many ways. And so trying to find a way to creatively meet that need is quite exhausting. I was very grateful. My child is in 4th grade, so he's not quite where you guys are yet, but to see the awareness that continues even beyond elementary school, very encouraging. And when his teacher introduced breakout rooms for the morning meeting, our enthusiasm for the 8:15 Zoom call changed dramatically, because the ability to actually talk to a classmate and get a response became part of the morning experience. And so thank you for being aware of that, because you know, this is a curve for everyone, and people are out of their comfort zones. Everybody's out of their comfort zone in some way. And in particular for those kids who went to school to see their friends, Zoom just doesn't really quite simulate that. So I'm just grateful to hear, as a parent, I'm grateful to hear that you're all in touch with that and that you're compassionate to others' needs. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I have a question, and very briefly, if anyone can speak to it. I see lots of adaptation, transformation happening in the systems. Therese highlighted some of them, which is great. And I'm wondering, is there any changes or adaptations that you are doing or you will be doing because of conversations you're having with elementary schools? So they're telling you upstream, you should expect these changes or these needs that needs to be met differently than how we used to do it. And that drove that change and that transformation in your practices. Is there anything that you found useful in your conversations from the elementary schools that did help you with that transformation? And maybe Craig, you have the both hands, so I don't want to call you on the spot, but you might be one example of where the conversation is happening in the same building, but the question is for everybody.
Craig, you want to go? You got thrown out there, Craig. You can go first.
Yes, I did. I guess it's been inferred a few times. The level, one thing that I'm very hopeful on the backside of this is the level of true collaboration around the spectrum of learning for our students, and using our paraprofessionals or instructional assistants in a more targeted, dynamic way that was referred to earlier. I don't know if that's what you mean, Sammy, something like that, but certainly I have seen more focus on the things that we just talked about, taking into account a student's race, their cultural background, their strengths, their challenges, what's going on in their family life, what's going on with them currently outside of school, besides just a math score, a reading score. I'm really hopeful that that is a piece that builds as a result of this experience for kindergarten through middle school students.
Sammy, what I would add is we've tried to take some of the information from our elementary schools on how they prioritize the priority standards for the fifth graders, because there has to be something that's kind of given up, especially last spring. And then use that to go, okay, here's where we're starting from. So we're going to grow from there. We're also tracking that the best we can as we go through this year, CV, by the way. So then that way we'll be able to provide that information for our incoming ninth graders next year to CV, because we have so many classes that usually are a year long. And when you go from a year long to a semester, and when you go from a year long to a semester and all comprehensive distance learning, but maybe we'll do some hybrid, obviously the amount of instruction that we're going to get through, the amount of standards we're going to get through is going to be adjusted. And while we prioritize the priority standards, they might not be in the same exact way that the ninth grade teachers would have expected them to be. So we're going to make sure we go, here's the priority standards that we put together. And we're still trying to touch on the other ones, but then be able to give them that information. And then we'll ask for the same as the middle child that we are here from the fifth graders to see if we can get that information to support them next year. I mean, next year will be huge as we look at this, right? And like what this year did to our students, that sounds bad, but it's true. Like what happened as a result of this, and how do we like catch them up without freaking them out at the same time, type of thing.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. This is great. And with that, I want to really share the appreciation to all of you and share the comments from my colleagues for the good work that you're doing. So thank you. And I want to hand it over to Ryan, the high school administrators, for the next presentation, unless you would like us to do a short break.
I think we should take 4 minutes, come back at 7:55, just because we have been sitting for the better part of an hour plus. So just a real brief break, and then we'll jump right in.
All right, we're stretching our feet until 7:56. And with that, we'll see you soon. Thank you. soon as the owl wakes up, we'll return from recess.
Yeah.
All right, so we are reconvening from recess. And next item on the agenda is the high school improvement plan.
All right, so we'll have a chance to hear from our high schools now. Again, they've put together a presentation. And so again, an opportunity to ask questions and learn a little bit more about the collaboration that's happening at that level. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nikki.
Okay. Hi again, everyone. Very similar to what I shared about middle school, I feel like high school is collaborating a lot more and talking about students that we share and know. If Lindsay, you want to go ahead and open it right up to that second slide with the 3 circles, that would be awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. So, you know, really between the 3 schools, we share students. We have students that are attending classes at both Corvallis High School and Crescent Valley High School. And then we have students that go from both schools to College Hill. What I often hear in meetings with principals is a shared ownership for students and their outcomes. I know especially our students who attend at College Hill that principals are frequently checking in on their progress toward graduation and how they're doing, just to see if it is a better fit than maybe the comprehensive high school was. So that's just something that I'm noticing, I think, even more in this environment. And at all 3 schools, we do still really continue to focus on graduation. You can go to the next slide. So very similar to the slide that I shared from the middle school, we've got enrollment here with the number in parentheses representing the students from their homeschool that are enrolled in Corvallis Online. I think of note here is the difference in the percent of students who are navigating poverty, who are attending College Hill. I also know when you look at graduation data later in tonight's presentation, you'll notice that's a group of students that we are talking about continually trying to improve outcomes for. So yeah, we'll be talking about some of the grad data for all for these groups a little bit later this evening. And I know you've seen this data before, so I'm going to just go ahead, unless there are questions about this, we'll probably move more to that format of saving questions for the end, and I'll pass it on to Nicole.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Hendricks, and I'm an assistant principal at Crescent Valley. So this slide, oh, can you send it to the next slide? So this slide is for across the high schools, this is our student enrollment by race and ethnicity. And just as the middle school, these counts reflect the federal definition, which, you know, the number of students of color in some of the categories could actually be higher, but they're counted in another category. You know, we'll see this, for example, there are 165 students who are identifying as Native and Indigenous students, but the majority of those students are reported under the Hispanic or multiracial categories. We also see this in our staff. So we have 6 Black staff members who are reported under Hispanic and Latinx or multiracial categories. But even with this, we know that a large portion of our student population just aren't represented in our staff, just as in the middle school. And we all know that this is an area in which we have work to do. We can go to the next slide. Sarah, I know that you had asked earlier how we were all doing. And I think this slide pretty much speaks to that. It says, our new normal is always feeling a little off balance, like trying to stand in a dinghy on the rough seas and not knowing when the storm will pass. But humans can get better at anything with practice. And I like this quote because it represents us knowing what we need to do, fighting through it, and there's hope and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're not afraid to keep trying. And then now I'm going to go and pass it along to Aaron.
Hello, my name is Aaron McKee, and I'm the principal at Crescent Valley High School, and I believe I know everybody in this meeting, so that shouldn't be a surprise to the people that are at least in their little pocket cameras. But the district vision is something that every school is their focus. It's not just a district vision, it's a school vision. And it really guides what our mission is as well. But every student being a graduate, every student makes growth and closing that opportunity gap. And it starts with that piece of when we look at our breakdown of who's graduating and how many students from each category and so on. And I know that, Jay, you don't like percentages, but we know every student. I'm just going to say we know which every student is that's not graduating. And the way you get your graduation rate up is by focusing on those areas where you're not doing as well. So if you want a 95% graduation rate, you need to make sure that all your subgroups are also excelling and graduating. And as we do our growth goals and set school improvement plans, we're looking for how do we make sure that all of our students meet that growth. And when we talk about closing that opportunity gap, that when we talk about the EOS, which Paul's going to cover later, and getting students into rigorous classes that normally wouldn't be represented there, and CTE programs, when we look at the graduation rate of students that are in our CTE programs, it's way up there at like 97%. And so making sure we have students that have access to these programs that historically have not, allows us to close that opportunity gap. So anyway, you know about this stuff, and as we go to the next slide and we talk about the mission, this is the focus of our mission. So there's three of us that are going to speak to this, and since I'm still speaking, I will speak first and then pass it on to either Eric or Matt. So if you look at each school's mission statement, each school came to that mission statement through work with their staff. It was talking with their staff of what do we want our students to get when they come to this school, and what do they want to experience, and what as a staff are we all on board with making sure that happens. And so at Crescent Valley, through rigorous and relevant learning, inspire students to be reflective, develop individual potential, and pursue unique personal and career interests. Fabulous statement. It's very difficult to remember. And so that's why when I think about our district vision, those are the things that we keep in mind. And then as you see the other mission statements, they're much easier to remember. So there you go. Moving on to either Eric or Matt.
I'll chime in. Matt Boring, principal, Corvallis High School. Hello to you boxes out there. Yeah, ours is pretty short, and I can tell you quickly how it came about. Kind of three different areas. We asked the staff to come up with, and the prompt was, what are three things you want students to leave Corvallis High School with? And we'd also asked a group of avid teachers at a Summer Institute a few years ago, back when travel was a thing, and also a group of students, not the whole student body, but a couple classes. And these were the top three. They were all variations of these three things. There was not a fourth one that was even close to the top three. The practice empathy, be resilient, take personal responsibility. And, in 2020, practicing empathy is actually a little easier because we're all affected by this. Being resilient is harder. I'm really proud of our students, and I tell them that when I get a chance to pop into their Zoom, that the fact they're showing up is just so resilient in itself, and that's super cool. And the taking personal responsibility is hard in 2020. Our capacity, I think, has diminished a bit. And so if we can emerge from this year with these core values in practice, I think we'll be on the right path to coming out of this thing. And to you, Eric.
Thanks. Good evening, Eric Wright, College Hill principal. So our students are really subsets of the students at Corvallis High School and Crescent Valley High School. So their visions and missions are definitely things that we are trying to aspire to. But one thing that I think we try to do a little bit uniquely at College Hill is really celebrate the strengths of our students. I think a lot of our students come to us and feel like in some way or another, the deck has been stacked against them. And so helping them to identify their strengths and to recognize that there are hard things that we face in life, and that's what we do. And that when we can see our kids ask hard questions and wrestle with challenging things and achieve and learn and overcome and look over their shoulders and see what they've accomplished and recognize their own strength, that that's really a great part of their growth experience. And rather than identifying themselves and by their challenges that they face, identifying themselves by the strength that they have is something that we really try to instill in each of our students. And as a staff, we really believe that the task before us is challenging and that we do those tough things. And I've talked to many staff this year that have said, I know we do tough things and this is hard this fall. And so it has been kind of a mantra that we say, like, when things are hard, like that's what we do. That's what we signed up for. What our students signed up for. That's what as a staff we signed up for. And it's really inspiring and to watch our kids uncover the strength that they have and to watch our staff help our kids to see that there's things that our students could do that they never thought was possible. And so that's what we would say our mission is. And so let's go to the next slide. Thank you.
Oh, am I up again, Nikki?
Yes, you are, Matt.
Awesome. I was asked to talk about what we're doing at CHS around equity, racial equity in particular, and I'm excited to talk about it. And we've been talking about it a lot at Corvallis High School. And a couple things happened really this summer at the same time. One, a lot of our staff members joined other staff members from around the district at a book study talking about, I think they read White Fragility first. I wasn't able to be a part of that one, but now we're reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, and I am a part of that. And oops, my light went off, sorry. So I've joined that, and through that, about 15 of my staff, in talking with Sheldon, who has a strong equity team and also have devoted some resources to an equity TOSA, they demanded essentially to me this summer that we need that too, and that's work that we want. And so we have an equity TOSA, Anna Zachariah, and a really strong equity team. And we've been meeting quite a few times, and our staff meetings this year is just racial equity work, and it's not easy. We have to grapple with a lot of things. It wasn't an easy election season to be grappling with some of these things, and we're mostly white. We have a lot of learning to do, and that piece has been powerful. I told staff our very first staff meeting on August 31st that one of our priorities, well, it's our second priority. First one was connecting with and caring for each other and our students. The second one is talking about race and equity courageously and constructively and acting upon those conversations. I think the difference this year is we want to act on some of the things we're doing. Now, the summer work also corresponded with a group of former students from mostly students of color from CV and CHS, who wanted to talk about issues in race surrounding the theater program. I said, I'll listen to you. And they had a great proposal about how to do two things: to have a committee that will help to vet some of the shows, the casting, the production values, things like that, and also provide a safe space for concerns around race. They were quite brave in sharing their stories, and I met with them a few times, and then met with them and Marcy Ann, Melissa Harder, and we're working to get that set up. Theater is going to be a thing again, and we look forward to that being more equitable. And really a goal of have it be a model for having equity at the forefront, and it's actually called the Corvallis School District Theater's Policy on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The work of the equity team has produced a student voice of concern that where students can report instances of racial discrimination, harassment, etc. And the point of that was to allow a space, but also to have some follow-up. That for sure. We had a student panel at one of our staff meetings recently. We invited back two former students, great students, both Black. And we wanted them to share their experiences of growing up in Corvallis and going through Corvallis schools. And they were fantastic, because they are fantastic, but they said some things that we needed to hear. One was very clear: no one looks like us. And one of the students had his first Black teacher last year in college in his life. He's had one at OSU, and talked about how they felt pressure to be the teachers of racial equity and racial history. And one of the students made this comment: we don't have time to teach everyone to be woke. That's not our responsibility. We want allies, not pity. And we need you, when you see something, to say something. And one of them talked about being followed at Fred Meyer all the time. She would go there with 300 other of our students back when that was a thing, and being profiled and being followed, and mentioned how hard it is to concentrate on your fourth period class when that's been your experience at lunchtime. And one of the things that we had to work through, that it's such a part of white privilege to not consider that as an educator, that, oh my God, that might be happening to this student at lunch. That is so out of my experience. And I think the thing that resonated for me the most was the comment, we loved you guys, talking to the whole staff, when we were here, but we could not talk to you about issues of race. And when at age 15 to 18. And I think that's what struck me in connecting the dots between those two students and the students of color in the theater department. While they were going through our schools, they did not feel a safe space to talk about race. And that's really what we want to create, and hold that space, and then use that space to make meaningful change. They can speak very eloquently now, 3 or 4 or 5 years out, all of these students. But that's really kind of the key for us. So we're learning from that. We've taken surveys of our staff about comfort in talking about race. These conversations haven't been easy at all. And so, we're working through these things. And Paul will talk about EOS later, and access and systems. But I guess I want to report the biggest thing I'm excited about is we have a large core group of teachers and staff who not only want to talk about race, they want to see movement toward racial equity. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And I think, Eric, you are going to talk about our commitments and how those helped us to identify key strategies for this year.
So yeah, I think I'm off. Yeah. So we're looking at academic achievement, make sure, I'm sorry, there we go. Want to make sure that we are maintaining graduation rates throughout the pandemic. And this is definitely a challenge. I think we had worked really hard over the last few years to keep our graduation rates high for all students and looking at subgroups. And we've had some more success in some groups than in others, but really trying to, across the board, raise the academic achievement of our students and trying to make sure that we are using strategies that can maintain those graduation rates through this pandemic. And we'll look at some of the data that we have had and some of the challenges that we're facing in a little while. Looking at equitable systems, making sure that we are increasing the participation rate in AP courses by historically marginalized students. We know that historically in the Corvallis School District, students in AP classes were middle class and above, they were white and they were Asian, and trying to make sure that our population in our AP courses and our other advanced courses mirrored our student body, and really trying to look at what we could do system-wise to increase access and opportunity. And again, you're going to talk about equal opportunity schools there. Making sure that we are implementing real-world learning for our students. Our students are going out into the real world, and our students are oftentimes asking us, why are we doing this? How is this relevant? How is this meaningful? And so trying to make sure that kids have opportunities to not just fill in bubbles and answer multiple choice questions, but wrestle with hard questions, design and build things, do projects, and really demonstrate their learning through real world learning experiences. That's an equitable thing, because not all students have access in their lives to all the abundance that our world has to offer us. And so we're trying to make sure that we bring some of that richness into our schools. And then just really making sure that we look at health and wellness. We know that students who are healthy, students who have healthy lifestyles and practices are more healthy adults and individuals that transition from high school into adulthood. And so trying to make sure that we're connecting staff and students using projects like Sources of Strength. I know that several of our schools, our secondary schools, have Source of Strength, which looks at not just stopping or putting an end to unhealthy practices, but looking at the strengths and asset that students have and building on those as a way to help our kids develop healthy patterns and stuff. So rather than take suicide example, rather than saying, let's have a suicide prevention week or whatever, looking at the assets and the strengths that students have and building and growing those so that students are focused on the assets and the strengths that they have, not just on the challenges that they're facing. So those are some of the commitments that we're trying to make sure that all students have access to. And I'll pass it on to the next person to talk about some of the strategies. And next slide.
So
that would be me. Oh,
yeah, you can go ahead. I was just going to say we have 7 strategies here on this slide, and we may bounce back and forth between a couple of slides as folks talk about, as Salvador talks to us about sources of strength a little bit more, and then when Paul talks to us about EOS. So Salvador, if you want to start, that sounds great.
Yes, I'm Salvador Munoz. I'm one of the assistant principals here at CHS, and I'm also the athletic director. So I'm going to first talk about the 9th grade success and senior seminar pieces here. So the 9th grade success, we have Spartan success blended in there with health. And it's an opportunity for the 9th graders to work on those skills such as responsibility, time management, getting organized and completing assignments. They can receive help from the teacher. They also can, right now in Zoom, it's a lot different for the teacher because they can't just walk to the desk and help a student. And this is what the health teachers were telling me, but they can set up breakout rooms, and they also have, most of them have an aide that they can send a student into a breakout room with. And then the senior seminar, students are essentially working on their future plans, from filling out the FAFSA to looking at scholarships, exploring schools. And Donna Keim is the one who teaches that. And one of the things she was telling me was she just wants everybody to go through the process in case, you know, one of them is 35 years old and they change their mind and they want to go to college, then they at least know the process. But they also explore other career options such as military and apprenticeships. They cover financial literacy, anywhere from budgeting to credit to reading their pay stub to make sure they're getting paid what they work for. And they also cover wellness. You know, they learn stress management skills and get some mental health tools. They will be working on a virtual career convention, and I was told that they are looking for volunteers, so I'll leave it at that before I pass it on to, I think, Paul and Aaron.
Got it, Aaron? You want to start with the bond work?
Well, so you obviously the board knows that there's this big bond that had passed a few years ago, and there's a lot of work involved with that. And so at Crescent Valley, we have 5 CT programs, and 2 of them are seeing their facilities get dramatically improved. That's the Design and Applied Arts and the Pre-Engineering program. And so that would encompass the ceramics and the glass arts, the jewelry making, wood shop, auto shop, the engineering stuff, metal shop, and that's there's a lot of stuff going on out there. But navigating that, we're here in the middle of a pandemic, students aren't at school, so hey, what's the best time to do the work in the building is when students aren't there. And so we're doing the best that we can, and thank you for the board for that support of having that happen. But I'm also planning for, if we come back to hybrid, you know, where do I put those teachers? So right now, Mr. Moses, our ceramics teacher, glass arts teacher, and jewelry making teacher is in the back of the stage. And his kilns are all in the boiler room, but it's working out great. It's unbelievable how adaptive he is. And our engineering teacher is in the French classroom. But hey, it's fun. And so we might be doing some, we come back at the hybrid this year, we might be doing some more things outside, and there's some different projects, and we're going to be a little bit more creative with that. And I'm actually looking at some limited in-person stuff that might be students that are actually enrolled in a class where they're doing things like that, students that need to have some more hands-on and more time at school. But the spaces are going to be unbelievable. Pretty excited about that. And we know that students that are connected to a CTE program have a much greater chance of, it's our highest category for grad rates in our district, 97%. So, all right, off to you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So we're not as quite as advanced as the CT or the bond work at CV. We just wrapped up the design process, I would say, about a month ago. We're really excited. A big focus of our work was the T building, where 4 of our 6 programs of study for our career and technical education are located at. You know, we were all really focused on how can we, and it's been a focus for a few years now, how can we increase non-traditional student participation in our CTE program. So for example, if you were to look at, for example, our metals program, female participation in that program is not proportionate or proportional. So working on like what are some things that we can do. So we've been talking, you know, focus groups with female students and talking about as a staff, how can we get more students to non-traditional students to participate in those programs. And so we're really excited about the projects that we landed on. It was surprising to see how quickly we could go through nearly $4.5 million. We didn't quite get all of what we wanted, but what is in store, we think will have a huge impact, a positive impact on our programs. particularly increasing workspace by covering a portion of the courtyard, having a covered walkway, getting some renovated bathrooms and some glass roll-up doors, just increasing the light, improving signage. So we're very excited. And then there's some basic things that needed to be taken care of no matter what that we're going to be doing. I know Kevin Skillings is very excited about the fact that we're replacing the dust collector that's been needed replacing for as long as I've been here, at least, probably more. So yeah, that's a quick synopsis of the bond work at CHS, and it's slated to get going in summer of 2021.
I'm going to jump in and just talk about just the successes that we're seeing in the phased in limited in-person instruction, as we have had a lot of kids learning from home, and realizing, as we have talked with students and families, that there are certain populations of kids that are struggling trying to learn from home. And so as we've been allowed to by the state, we've been bringing some students in. It's been exciting to watch some students that have been disengaged re-engage in school, get some hope again that they can get some things done, make connections with staff and other students, and excited to see that continue to grow and develop as we're allowed to with safety. So that's been an exciting strategy that I think has been effective for a lot of kids. And really trying to target those students that are struggling most. So looking at who the kids are that have trouble accessing learning for whatever reason, trying to make sure that those kids get priority for those spots.
I can jump in really quickly and talk about grading for equity. I know that it was already mentioned at the middle school, and we're doing the same thing. It's kind of a district initiative. I guess what I'd like to talk about a little bit, for us at least, is the incredible growth we're seeing in teachers being willing to really grapple with grading policies. I remember when in my first year in this position at CHS, we had a book that we bought a copy for everybody so that we could talk about this, and it just went nowhere. And now we have teachers who actually are sitting, and the pandemic actually has helped with this, right? They are grappling with, okay, given the fact that we're now doing comprehensive distance learning, what does that mean about assessment? And it actually means that assessment in a lot of ways can become truer than it has been in the limited ways that we've been looking at assessment in a kind of more traditional classroom. So when we were looking at changing grading, our hope was that we could move students to a little bit more intrinsic motivation around grading. I think that's been a truly hard thing to do during the pandemic, but it has worked for some students, and we have some students who are doing much better in CLD than they were actually doing in person. We wanted greater consistency. We wanted to really look at bias and resist bias in our grading and improve accuracy around grades, what grades actually reflect in terms of student learning. And so Greg mentioned some things about giving up zeros. The lowest grade you can get is 50%, so that all the increments between grade levels make sense. That we're in this year mostly a 90-10, some 80-20 around proficiency and assessments being the larger percentage in that practice work, counting much less in the overall grade, because it's all about building toward proficiency. So Greg covered a lot of it, but we're excited about the ways that this is supporting students during a pandemic. And I'm really excited about the impact I think it will have post-pandemic in looking at grading practices at the high school.
All right, Salvador, do you want to talk more about sources of strength and that work at, just to provide a little bit more detail, that work there at CHS?
Yes, I can go.
Awesome.
So Eric touched on it a little bit. You know, the mission is of Sources of Strength is to help with prevention of suicide, violence, bullying, and substance abuse. And the class was taught, because it was a first quarter class, by Lauren Reed, who was a phenomenal fit. I think you definitely have to have the right person in there, and his relational skills with the students and positive attitude just make it a perfect fit for him. I know that they went to a training, I think it was the previous year is what I was told, and the counselors got to go as well. And the students in their diverse group, he had 24 students this year, and essentially were kind of peer leaders. They connected with each other, and they had a few campaigns throughout last spring, but also this year. One of the things they did was they reached out to staff and asked them to submit 2 songs that make them happy, and then they compiled it and created this massive playlist that's just, you know, it was pretty neat to see what everybody brought to the table. You know, as you can imagine, all kinds of music. So they, you know, the students took that, and also another thing they did is they had a trusted adult, or who is your trusted adult campaign. And I don't know if you ever drove by CHS, but over at Taylor Field on the fence, they put up cups, and it was the hashtag who is your trusted adult. So with that, you know, several of them had staff members, a couple of them had like a parent, you know, a different adult, but essentially someone they could go to, and they wrote letters to them. I know I heard that one of them, it was they wrote it to their mom, and the mom reached out to Lauren Reed, and it, you know, very emotional, because, you know, she never would have thought that her daughter was going to give her this. And then a couple staff members here that received letters, you know, that had never gotten something like this. So just a positive message and hope during this challenging time for students and staff. You know, every class they have the wheel. So if we can go to that next slide, there's a couple pictures there, actually, I forgot. So there's the CHS, or not the CHS, the who's your trusted adult cups on the fence there, and then the Sources of Strength wheel. So every day, Lauren told me they started off with a check-in, and students would share with everybody else where they were. They build leadership skills those first few weeks, and kind of have a system. I got to go in there once, and we played this really funny game, but it, you know, it just makes you comfortable. I won't explain the game because it was really awkward. But once you know, you were vulnerable, then you were in. So yeah. Another thing they did is they also put positive messages around campus, and overall, you know, it's a very valuable program to have, you know, to offer. We're talking about how we can grow this, because one of the ideas they have is to make it a school-wide initiative, to where everybody has a trusted adult here, not just the students who are taking the class, or, you know, they have peers here as well who they can trust. So yeah, that's essentially it. Again, very neat program, and we got to figure out a way to offer more sections in the future.
I would just like to add on, Salvador and I met with staff who are really invested in this, growing this program at CHS, and they shared a lot of stories. And I think one of the things that came up really loud for me, related to an earlier question from Sarah, was about, you know, how people are doing. The great thing that Salvador and I both heard about was the impact of this on adult mental health. So while there are lots of benefits of Sources of Strength for students, that connection to the adults and the positive feelings of feeling like they have purpose, I think, that come through for adults is another real strength of this program in our schools. And we have a little bit more, we're just kind of providing you some extra information about some of the initiatives that I think might be newer to you or you haven't really heard a ton about yet. And so Paul, I think, is going to talk to us next about equal opportunity schools and the work we're doing in that partnership.
Sure. I remember last year around this time when we were together, and I sure missed the was it the lasagna and the garlic bread? But no, we were talking about how excited we were about partnering with equal opportunity schools. And so really the goal behind partnering with equal opportunity schools was to eliminate the participation gap when it comes to our advanced placement classes. You know, as Aaron and Eric alluded to, there's was some work to be done in that area, and there still continues to be work on that, but we're excited about the progress we've made since last school year. Last year was basically a kind of a diagnostic year in both CV and Corvallis High School, where we were identifying what are those barriers in place that we as adults put in place for when it comes to student participation in advanced placement classes, and to break down those barriers. And so each school has an EOS building team that really works around that and leads the efforts in that. And then also to identify student goals, student strengths, skill sets, and not just moving away from the traditional markers that we've used to determine AP readiness, GPA, test scores, and looking more at a well-rounded student and what are the strengths and assets that they bring that show that they can be successful at the AP level. So when we're looking at things like resiliency, perseverance, you know, what are their aspirations and goals post-secondary? And so just compiling that information through a survey and really identifying students who are AP ready, not based on those traditional markers, and really having individual one-on-one conversations with those students, and really talking to them about what are their goals post-secondary. A lot of it too is transmitting confidence and belief in students. Oftentimes students are interested but not quite sure or feel confident that they can be successful at the AP level or in an AP class. And so having that conversation with students and really saying, hey, we believe in you, you can do this. And then also, based on that survey, we actually determined, hey, we have some, we're not offering some advanced placement classes that students would really be interested in. So as a result, for example, this year we're offering, at least at CHS, we're offering, you know, AP Environmental Science and AP Psychology. We offered some for the first time. And so we're excited about that, and there was a lot of student interest in that, so that was pretty exciting. So that was last year, really kind of a diagnostic, identifying you know, what was the work to be done, and then starting to recruit students. And then this year is really about sustaining. It's also about continuing to. We have not eliminated the gap yet, and I'll walk you through the data in just a second. And also, a pandemic happened in the middle of all of this work, and so adjusting to the new reality and really supporting teachers and students, particularly first-time AP students that weren't planning on taking their first AP class on Zoom. So really supporting those new to AP students, and then as an AP teaching team, really just providing space and time for us to share best practices and what is working, what is not, how can we make AP curriculum accessible, how can we make AP students, new to AP students, feel welcome and feel comfortable and feel like they can be successful in this Zoom environment. So it's been yeah, I mean it's been exciting work. Who would have thunk, you know, this our first year with a lot of new AP students, we'd be doing it this way. But like others have alluded to, our staff and students have been tremendously resilient. So when you look at this chart that Lindsay put up, thank you. What you can see is we have shrunk the participation gap last year. When you look at the blue line, which is our medium high income white and Asian students, 47% of our 11th and 12th graders who are medium and high income white and Asian last year were enrolled in an AP. And it's an interesting phenomenon that happened, but actually Equal Opportunity Schools explained it to us that this work was going to also increase AP participation across the board. They kind of likened it to a rising tide lifts all boats. And so it has increased to 55% of this year. And then our students of color and low-income students. Last year, enrollment in AP classes was at 30% of our 11th and 12th graders, and right now it's at 51%. So there's still some work to be done, but we're excited about the progress that we've shown, that we've accomplished, and we are going to continue to focus on this work.
Thanks, Paul. I can,
yes.
So we're going to actually, Lindsay, go back just a couple of slides to those key strategies. So I realized we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I know Eric shared something about limited in person, and Jennifer and Mark were also going to talk about limited in person, both at the comprehensive high schools and how that looks. But also Mark was going to talk specifically to athletics.
Okay, I'll go first, Nikki. My name's Jennifer Still. I'm one of the assistant principals at Crescent Valley. And so limited in person, we started to phase it in the middle of November. And collectively, so how that worked out is through our student success team, the SST process, we were able to identify students who are marginalized. And so those are the students that we wanted to bring in for sure, because we noted that they weren't engaging and they're struggling and for various reasons. And so that was the process to identify the students. And so we invited them in to participate. And collectively, we are serving 130 students across the 3 high schools, including students who are in the life skills and wings programs. So the typical it varies a little bit from each school depending on kind of staffing schedules and student schedules, but typically it's 2 cohorts of 20 students or less, 1 cohort in the morning and 1 cohort in the afternoon. And so there is some variance, but that's mostly how it's presented at our schools. I would say that the students are, not only working on work, they're also being assisted to create plans to think about time management, how to not get behind in their work, and to create goals to pass their courses. And they're just enjoying the connections. I would say the students that are in the Wings program are really benefiting from the social emotional connections that they're having by being able to come into a building and see other people. I was able to get some testimony from students, and so I'll just share a few. One student, a senior, said, "I really enjoy coming to school again. I feel like I get more help on my assignments and I get more work done while I'm here. I enjoy seeing teachers and being able to talk with them face to face. I'm really happy I got this opportunity to do in person." Another student said it's more peaceful because there are not as many people around and I feel more confident being here. Another one is being a part of something that feels like the learning I'm used to. Student said, I'm actually getting my work done. So just, I know at Crescent Valley, watching the students come in, they're really, they're happy to be there, and they come in, they do their work, and they're getting to talk to each other and talk to adults. And it's really sweet actually to see them come in, because it's, all these tough boys coming in, and they're all happy. And so anyway, it's a really good thing. And we're excited to be we're excited to do the work and seeing the work that the kids are doing, and it's rewarding to serve the students that need it the most. So.
Nikki, can I throw a comment in?
Absolutely.
It pertains to limited in person. We struggled for a while because no one in our life skills program on the staff end agreed to come into the building to work with students, and that was disappointing. But Krista Schmieder, who is not a SPED teacher at all, you know her as our leadership ceramics teacher, said, hey, I can teach some art to life skills students. And another, an EA, but not a life skills EA, Ren Hope, he said, I'm in and I'll help. And so we've been able to bring some life skills kids in, two small cohorts twice a week, or 2 times a week. I guess that's the same thing, isn't it? And it's fabulous. I mean, it's just fabulous. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that.
Thanks, Matt. And Mark, do you also want to speak to athletics and kind of how that has looked as a way to re-engage students?
Yeah, I'll talk about athletics a little bit. I'm Mark Henderson. I'm one of the assistant principals at Crescent Valley High School and also the athletic director at Crescent Valley. Related to limited in person is been our ability to get kids back on campus to participate in athletic workouts based on OHA's guidance for K-12 sports and the current Benton County risk level. We are allowed to have both indoor and outdoor sports practices. These sports practices are entirely voluntary by both student and staff. And at each school, we've got roughly about half of the sports teams participating about 2 to 3 times per week right now. So it's exciting to see them out there. The kids are excited. I can probably speak for Sal when I say it's good for our mental health as well to go out and watch the kids having fun. And as the county COVID risk level changes, our indoor coaches and players know that could change at any minute, and they could be, we would have to stop the indoor part.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks everybody for kind of letting us jump around just a bit. We do have a lot going on as we think about ways to engage our students, get them ready for when they do leave our schools, and prepare them for graduation. So I'm going to let Paul, Lindsay, we're going to go ahead to slide 13. And I will let Paul talk about our graduation data to wrap up our presentation tonight.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Yeah, we have lots of celebrations on this data point. We have some challenges that we are focusing on, but I would particularly want to highlight with our students of color, the orange line. We're all excited to see that growth from 78% to 91%. That is, I think that speaks volumes to the equity being at the center of our focus of everything we're doing. So we're pretty excited about that. I know Aaron alluded to our CTE concentrators, which just started getting tracked 3-4 years ago, or I think it's 5 years now. And a CTE concentrator is basically a student who has taken at least 1 year career and technical education coursework. And throughout their 4 years of high school. And so obviously that's a huge indicator of success. And I would also want to, and I don't want to ignore the green line, our students with disabilities. Now the data is a bit misleading in the sense that extended diplomas and alternate certificates are counted as non-graduates, which I know Matt has said on many occasions that we have real problems with that. A lot of our students in life skills earn those diplomas, and it's the amount of growth they show over 4 years, and for them to be counted as non-graduates is quite insulting, but that's how the state counts them. But it does speak to work we have to do when it comes to better serving our students in special education. So there's a lot of things that we've been focusing on to improve that. Moving towards more of a co-teaching model, where our special education teachers are pushing into core classrooms, English classrooms, math classrooms to co-teach. And we've seen a lot of success with that model. And so we're continuing with that and expanding that. So yeah, with that, I wanted to pass it off to, I believe, Colleen to go over the next slide.
So yeah, we just wanted to kind of circle back around to Kendi's work and the work of our teacher, of many of our staff members, about how to be an anti-racist and how to step forward in terms of equity for the school. So one of the things that Kendi wrote is, the good news is that racist and anti-racist are not fixed identities. We can be racist one minute and an anti-racist the next. What we say, sorry, hold on here. I suddenly bounced around and you're all in the middle of my quote. What we say about race, what we do about race in each moment determines what, not who we are. And so we're very excited about moving forward with our staff in providing a wholesome environment, a supportive environment for all of our students.
Thank you. Before Lindsay turns the slides down, I want to go back to slide 12, if you don't mind, and I want to make very brief comments. I did hear this, and I saw papers or statements and research talking about it, but this is a clear data point that shows us the practice and the evidence that when we focus on the special needs and unique needs of our students of color and low-income students, not only they succeed, but everybody succeeds. So really thank you for highlighting that. It's really, the numbers are showing us how equity works and how equity is good for everybody. So just want to highlight that. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it into Jay.
A couple of comments, maybe time for data later. I would like to know how many in-person students at each high school. I think I heard someone say 20 cohorts of 20. Is that 20 per high school in the morning and in the afternoon, or 20 total in the district? And I don't need that tonight, but just looking. I'm also interested in hearing just an update as we move through the school year about students who are seniors and how they're doing with college application, what trends we can see, if anything. And then finally, my bigger point is thank you. I'm thanking both high schools for their CTE expansion and just the excitement I can hear in your voices. Last comment, one of our jobs as a board member is to convey to the public what's really going on in our schools, and we're kind of spokespeople. I'm sad that I look on the chart, I think there's 8 people watching tonight, but what I want to tell them is that based upon knowing you and knowing what you say tonight, when you say things like, we do tough things, we practice empathy, we work on being resilient, and we take personal responsibility, those are genuine comments, and I really appreciate you. So it's easy to turn and say to the public, hang with us. It's tough work, and all these things that are in your character are just absolutely coming out. So thank you.
So Jay, I have those numbers if you want them. I can break them down, but I'll just start with, there's 55 students at Corvallis High School, 32 at Crescent Valley High School, and 43 at College Hill High School. And if you want the numbers in the cohorts, I can tell you that too. But
No, that was a great summary. That's
Okay,
a great summary. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Sarah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask my question again. You all touched on it a little bit, but how are the teachers doing? You mentioned teachers who were not ready to come back into buildings. I'm worried about our teachers right now, just because I feel like they've all become first-year teachers all of a sudden in this new world. So what, how is the support for them? What is the experience for them looking like right now?
They're overwhelmed. And I think though, a lot of that is they take a lot of pride in their work, and the work is so weird right now. And that's a bit of an energy zapper where you just want to show up as your best self. And that's not possible every second of every day right now. Certainly not for principals either. But it's okay. I describe that to everybody. It's not great by any stretch, but it's not a train wreck. I mean, this is okay. And I talked to probably 10 teachers today who said that it is literally getting better every week. And things aren't taking as long. The biggest issue was that everything a teacher would plan, there go my lights again, that just takes 3 times as long. And so, but they're hanging in. They really are. But you're right to be concerned. I think about their physical and mental health at this point. Their biggest fear, as conveyed to me, is if we do look at coming back in a hybrid model, what does that mean? What do we gain? And because they're getting better at what they're doing, and if there's another 5-week learning curve in the middle of a semester, a big fear is that the kid taking geometry second semester gets an inferior product to the kid who was able to take it first semester. So those are the conversations I'm having with teachers. They're more about those types of things than I'm scared and where's my mask and where's my whatever. But they are welcoming winter break, to be sure.
I'm going to jump in here because I bet Aaron's going to be positive and bring it home strong. I think there is, I think my staff is feeling, they're tired, they're exhausted, and there's some fear that we are going to lose some kids. I think we talk about this generation of kids being digital natives, and they're good at playing on their phones, but not necessarily adept at navigating education in a distance learning model. And the research that I've done says that historically about 50% of kids who sign up for online classes pass them. And so we're now asking our staff to help 100% of kids who did not sign up for online classes experience success. And so our staff are working hard, and every day they're fighting for every kid and trying to help make sure every kid is successful. And sometimes the results aren't always as rosy as we would hope them to be. And so I think it's our job as leaders to make sure that we are reminding people of the hard work that they're doing, remind them that they're seen. I want to just say that my staff got to meet with Ryan and Rinda. They came to meet with our staff and just try to offer ears and support, and it was really kind. And people felt cared for. And so a lot of our work is going to be taking care of our people because they're given a lot.
Thank you for being honest. I see school from the parent side every day, and the work that's being done is heroic. Keeping our kids going, and I don't want to lose kids, and I don't want to lose teachers.
Totally. And we have to keep equity in our mind as we think about these conversations, because the education of a middle-class white family who has a parent who can stay at home is very different than a family where the adults are all in the service field and they leave for the day and the kids are home alone, having to navigate school with all the distractions there. And so there's a lot of things we have to work through, and it's not simple or clean for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not
so
sure.
Aaron, you gonna bring it home?
Well, whenever you want to go into battle, you want to make sure you have the best possible people going to battle with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of a better team that I'd rather go to battle with than the teachers in this district. And the support staff. They're unbelievable. Having said that, the challenges that a staff member has this year are significant, just like everybody that has whatever job they have. Staff members, teachers, all the support staff in schools, they're in this business because they like to be around people. They like to make a difference, and they like to make that connection. And there's so much about public education where a student comes to school and you read the body language of what's going on, and you help that student make the adjustments. And there may not even be any words said. It may just be, hey, let's hang out for a while, or I just want to be in this room because I know this person cares. And as much as the students need that, the staff need that too. And they're missing that. We have staff that come to school to teach their classes. We have some staff that are taking care of small kids teaching their classes. It's not the same thing. It's all over the place. And somehow with all the learning, new in Canvas and learning at home and keeping kids connected, and for good reason, some kids not ever having their camera on. Okay, that's the reality. They're doing it. And like I said, I wouldn't pick a better team to do it. So it's hard, and I'm concerned about our students, staff, and families, but they're doing it, and they're doing it better than anybody I can imagine. So my kids two of my three daughters are in this district right now, and I'm very happy that they are. It's not an accident that I live here with my children and have them be part of this process. And it's a team. And there's some really cool things we're gaining from this. The shift on using the digital stuff to support. And when we go back, we're going to have all these extra tools to make it even that much better. So I am pretty optimistic. Thank you for that, Eric. But we have some great people, and we're really lucky.
Sarah, thank you all for what you do.
I just want to say one thing. You've asked every one of the principal groups how the teachers are doing, and I want to recognize that the elementary principals you saw a few weeks ago, the middle school principals earlier, and now these high school principals, they've been working nonstop since June last year to make this year work. And we also need to take a second and recognize that hard work. They have done more for our staff and our students than they ever probably anticipated they would have to do. And they're also learning and on that edge of that learning curve. So I know not everyone is here, but I think it's important to make sure that you recognize that we know how hard you've all been working too. And your mental health and wellness is also incredibly important to all of us.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah, for asking this question. And Lou, and then Vince.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions and comments, and one of them has to do with the mission statements. And of course, my small child just came in right when I'm unmuted. I was wondering with the graphs earlier up on the enrollment by race and ethnicity page. I just wanted to point out that there is an overrepresentation of some students of color in College Hill, and want to acknowledge the hard work that happens over there to help those students feel a sense of community and belonging that may have led them, that they may have missed somewhere else. And that's not like a diss on the other schools, but I know that it's hard for students of color in Corvallis, and wanted to appreciate the hard work that happens. But I did notice that there was an overrepresentation, and I didn't know if y'all had noticed that. And I also have never seen the mission statement side by side like that. And I've kind of, from like my background in rhetoric, was kind of looking at it. I don't know if it's noticeable to a lot of folk, but it's almost written in a class privileged way, where like the longer the mission statement is, depends on which school, which corresponds with socioeconomics populations at the schools. And I think that what you shared, Eric, about the we do tough things and how much that means, I'm wondering if that can be amplified more. I'm not suggesting to like necessarily rewrite the mission, but you all do some really powerful work and do tough things. And I like that, how you all use that. But I did notice that with the language and what is implied by the language in those, how it's corresponding with socioeconomic class at the schools. And I don't know if that, I had never noticed that until I seen them side by side like that, and thought it was worth pointing out. But just a couple more comments, and my questions too, is that the sources of strength thing was really awesome. And I think there's a lot that could be learned from that big jump in the AP participation with students of color. That is a really significant like percentage jump. It's not a huge number of students, but of course, because of the demographics of the schools, but the percentages went way up. And I think that's really awesome. And also the way that students of color graduation rate has been going up is worth noting. And I'm wondering how we can shift like conversations from a deficit model about students of color to reflect that increase. Because a lot of times we refer to students of color as like the ones struggling when they're actually graduating at a higher rate at this moment. And I think that's worth highlighting. But the question I had was actually for Matt. After all that, the question is about the theater program. And I'm wondering if you all have been connecting with the work the Majestic is doing about equity work and their DEI work. I know that Jimbo down there has been doing a really incredible job of using an equity lens in theater, and they've been really creative and have a review process and everything. So I'm not sure if the students have connected with the Majestic yet, but that was just a question I had if that had happened yet. Yeah.
I don't think specifically with the Majestic, but I know that, and that's great. And I want to pursue that. Thank you. I know that some are in college theater programs and or even graduate school, and these issues around race and representation and appropriation and all that are just right in the forefront. So I think that's what spurred them to bring this up, as well as they wanted to share their personal experience. But I think it'd been fantastic to partner with the Majestic and convenient. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's pretty cool to see that going on, but yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So at first, I want to express my appreciation. There are districts all over the state are taking different approaches to COVID and how to deal with it. And I'm just immensely impressed by this team, the middle school team, and the elementary leadership team, how, in a time when you could just sit back and say, hey, we're just going to try and survive. We're just going to get through this year. We're going to just get through this pandemic, and just try and keep our kids from rolling back too far. You guys are like trying to completely transform education. I mean, it's just really impressive, the amount of effort additional effort on top of addressing the pandemic. You're doing that. You're meeting those expectations, but further, you're taking a quantum leap forward in your own equity work and the work that you're doing in your schools. And I just think that really needs to be called out. You're doing double duty. So I can see the fatigue on your faces. I mean, the hour is late, but it really needs to be said that the leadership team for this district is just doing amazing work. I don't know what got into you. Maybe it was the pandemic, but you're doing really, really good work. I just want to call out that graduation rate. That is not a fluke, folks. That's not a mistake. That didn't happen. That's focus. That's the focus of this team making that happen. I'm just really impressed with that. The equal opportunity schools and, other board members have called that out. I think Sammy really highlighted the important message there is that this equity work is helping all our kids. And so I'm just really glad that we're able to show that to the community. Too bad more people aren't watching it right now. The other thing I have noted here is that thank you for focusing on some of our most vulnerable kiddos, our life skills kids, and making sure that they're getting into buildings and getting the things that they need, because it's really hard to do that at home. So thanks for focusing there. My question, and it's, I don't need all answers tonight, but it's a standing question. You guys are doing a lot of work. What do you need from this board? How can we support you right now? How can we support you over the next 6 months as you're doing this work? And, I'd be happy to hear comments now, but just sit with that question. And if things come to mind, push that through Ryan and let us know how we can best support you, because you're doing really amazing work and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vince. Would anyone like to comment
Or you can go home and get some rest. I'm okay with that too. The hour is late.
I would love to get you home, but I have one last question. Unless Therese or Jay have any questions, I want to give you an opportunity. Raise your hand if you have. So one last question is on my mind, and it's kind of close. Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Eric keeps trying to raise his hand.
Oh, Eric, go ahead.
This is just really briefly. I just wanted to really thank what Lou had to say about seeing our students' cultural diversity, not from a deficit perspective. And I think once we can get our system to be able to serve our students more equitably, I'm excited to get to the point where we can really talk about all those different cultural perspectives as an asset and a strength and a way to bring more richness to all of our conversations, but also to individual stories. And I just want to thank you for challenging us in that way. I think it's easy to look at that always as a deficit or as a shortcoming, but as we can really see that as an asset and a strength that different people bring to the table. I'm excited to have those conversations. So thank you for pushing that. So.
Thanks, Eric. I'm sorry I did not notice, but thank you. That was really well said. I hear from parents that their high school seniors are burned out of school and getting ready to move on, which leads them to either do two things, either just give up on everything or take on more than what they can chew. I've noticed that with my youngest brother, who's a college senior, not a high school senior, and taking 21 credits in engineering. And I'm telling him, this is too much, you will regret it. Take your time, don't rush into graduation. That's for a college level. But I'm hearing it from a few parents here and there. I'm not sure if these are anecdotes or it's a pattern. So that's the first question. Is this something that you're noticing, that high school seniors are feeling this pressure, like I need to move on to the next step more than usual during this pandemic? And if it is, what would you tell them? Or how would you guide them?
That's a good question, Sammy. I think I'm not sure that senioritis is stronger than usual, because it usually kicks in about now.
Okay.
in a typical year. But I see, I think, less energy around checking out than energy. I want to get done at the semester and just do something else because Zoom school sucks. And so I see quite a bit of that. A lot of students are working and out of necessity. And that is, it sort of rearranged some priorities from some kids. I've had a lot of conversations this week with seniors. It's like, hey, I get it. You're working, but you need to graduate. We need to, keep your eye on that ball as well. So I think that an uncertainty about what a next step would even look like, until this thing is behind us. I have, though, had a lot of seniors tell me, oh, thank God I'm applying to college. It feels normal. And usually that's a source of anxiety for kids. I think it's less in the kids I've talked to. It's like, oh, cool. I fill out an application. I write an essay. There may be something good in my future. And so, to be honest with you, I'm worried a lot more about the ninth graders than the seniors. They've transitioned into a school they've never seen. And for way too many of them, we've literally not seen their faces. We've just seen a black square. And that's my real worry. We know our seniors. And so if kids are disconnected, that's on us. That's not on COVID. I worry about our ninth graders.
Okay, thank you.
So there's two things that we have this year for our seniors that we didn't have last year. So we had last spring to see what our current seniors would do. So we had some idea of the ones that were going to struggle when the school year started. And in addition to that, the way that our schedule was set up this year, a lot of our seniors, a typical school year, a senior might take 5 classes for the year. And the way that it's set up right now, they can finish 4 in the first semester, especially if they're signed up for 4 AP classes, because all the AP classes had to happen in the fall. So we're in a situation where seniors have taken all their classes, and now how do I finish out a school year with only 1 class? And so some of them are going to finish because they did a year's worth of work in a semester that they would have, if they were the year before, would have taken the whole year to do that. But yeah, I'm going to agree with Matt. The freshmen are the ones that we didn't have a pattern. So that's, you mentioned, or Matt, or Darren mentioned in the previous meeting about that transition piece and trying to communicate with the high school and being the middle child and also needing to get that from the elementary school. So the big thing I've done this year with Darren has been the instigator of this, with me at least, and I'm sure Alicia over at LP has been doing that for CHS, but is just communicating the students that he had that were 8th graders last year, their last 3 months of school and where they struggled, and trying to connect those dots with those kiddos and trying to get them in the limited in person and so on. But yeah, not knowing who the kids are is really hard, not seeing them face to face. And so our outreach this year, our support staff and Jennifer still, and Nicole and so on, they've been going to homes and doing care packages for all new students to the school, just trying to introduce themselves and see them. And they've been trying to get to every incoming 9th grader just so they can put a face to these students. And that's so you got to give them at both ends, and then you can't forget about the middle child, those 10th and 11th graders. And it's fun.
Sammy, I'd like to answer real quickly as a parent and as an educator. So I've got 2 senior boys at CHS, and I want to really give a shout out to the senior seminar and counseling departments at CHS and CV and the work that they're doing. I had kids who were seniors 3 years ago and then kids who are seniors now, and the senior seminar practices about helping kids have a concrete plan that they leave high school with to help them with their next steps is a much more robust experience. And so I really want to say kudos to those teams and what they've built and put together, because that has been strong. And I feel like there's a lot of things in there, kids looking at looking at going straight into career, looking at the military, looking at trade school, looking at community college, looking at universities. I think there is a more robust, comprehensive look at those sorts of things that students are walking through. And so I want to give shout outs to that at the 2 high schools. I also just really want to highlight just those educators that are really focusing on those kids who don't do those assignments on their own and really giving them some extra help. I see Donna Kime, who does that work at College Hill and CHS, and I know that she really is fighting for those kids and asking them tough questions and making them wrestle through some things about how they're going to be prepared for what comes next. And it is challenging right now because I know that employers say the things that keep you employed are being able to show up to work on time and stay off your phones. And right now, those are skills that are hard for us to train kids in because time is really flexible. And right now, the kids to be successful in school, they have to be plugged into technology all day. So trying to help our kids to be able to have some self-control in there and manage their time are things we also have to work on. And so that's going to be interesting as how we send our seniors off well. So just something for us to think about.
Wonderful. Lou will have the last question.
Yeah, it's just a question. Speaking of freshmen, I have a freshman at CHS this year. So, and some of the things that she's noticed that have worked really well has been able to focus on a smaller amount of classes at one time. I know that was by design because of the pandemic, but I'm wondering if you all are thinking of how that could look in the future, or if it's a switch back to more classes, or seeing how kids are doing with, or students are doing with a less amount of class. One of the things, as somebody that teaches and works at OSU, is that actually models the classes in college is having less classes for longer times and spread out differently. And so I was kind of curious a little bit if that's something you all had considered moving forward, or if it's just for the pandemic time.
I want to answer that first because I don't want any district office people to answer it first.
I knew you were going to answer it first.
I hope we keep something similar. There are some drawbacks to this intensive block schedule, but in my opinion, they don't outweigh the concept that students have half as many classes at one time and teachers have half as many students at one time. And I don't think we're going to be back to normal till the fall at the earliest. And we have such care and connection work to be done. Our staff needs half as many students, and the kids need to have those deeper relationships with their teachers. And you know, the big argument is there are gaps in certain subjects. I take math in the fall. I might not get math until the spring of the following year. I think what I would say in response to that is if we have an equity lens and we're looking at our most vulnerable students, I mean, Thanksgiving break killed them. I mean, it's, any break in a week was a momentum killer for them, as we've been learning in limited in-person this week. So I'm not worried about that. There's the top end argument. I can't take 6 AP classes at one time. Well, good. You don't need to. And I actually talked to my AP teachers and I said, if we stayed with this and it were a normal in-person year, would you be comfortable with the coverage in first semester? And they said, yes. There need to be the need, or there's review needs in the spring for the test, but they said, yes, they could. And so there you have it. I had to get my voice out there on this one because
I'm gonna go
negative feedback from parents, students, or teachers.
Another big equity lens on this one for me is in a typical year, if you have all those classes all year long, where do you ever get that catch-up opportunity? So like if we have a student that's coming in 9th grade and we know that student has struggled in math, they could take math first semester. And if there was a need, they could take it second semester. And where you can't do that in that other model, and you just get behind, And then the next year you're taking 2 classes, or language arts or anything like that. So those are the pieces that are not lost on me with this model. Having less students that you connect with, and having more opportunities for a student that has struggled with school to have more successes.
Can I ask, just because one subject that hasn't been brought up is foreign languages. And I think I'm more comfortable with all of the other subjects being offered on a semester block than I am with foreign languages. And has there been any discussion of how that might be addressed?
So historically, when we had intensive block, you would often take Spanish as an example, because my wife was a Spanish teacher. You would often take Spanish 1 second semester your sophomore year or freshman year, and then Spanish 2 first semester sophomore year, and then you could even take Spanish 3 second semester sophomore year. So you can stack them that way, and as long as you schedule it intentionally like that, you could make the odd years second semester and even years first semester, so that kids don't have those big gaps.
And that's what we did this year for scheduling. So all Spanish 1 is second semester and all Spanish 2 was first.
And
Yeah, I just know there's some dual language kids who have gaps this year, but
yeah, the dual
it is
language
this year.
the dual language issue, I think, is a bigger issue than just the world language, I think. And I'm saying that because I've talked to my Spanish teachers who have taught in the intensive block previously, and they said they covered a lot more in the intensive block than they did in the rotating year long. And they were comfortable with I mean, they understood the gap, but they liked what they covered so much that they that they were okay with it. And the research about gaps in learning, I've looked at it quite a bit actually. There are a lot of studies that winter break is as bad as summer for most kids. And so we need to keep those types of things in mind as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I don't want to take more of your time, but I want to highlight this great work you're doing. It's transformative, it's resilience, and it will outlive us. I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying the changes and the problem solving we're doing right now and the solutions we're creating right now, it's going to last not only beyond the pandemic, but we're redefining public education and its impact and its ability to respond to the unique needs of our students. So really thank you for answering our questions and for the presentation. One thing before I say goodnight, I want to say thank you for your families for allowing you to be here with us and for us taking you away from them for most of this evening. So please thank them on our behalf and thank you for your continued service for our kids and community. Much appreciated.
Take care, team.
Thank you, board.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Next item on the agenda is consolidated action. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in the consolidated action?
I'll just say that I was prepared in our last meeting, so there were no surprises, so I have no questions.
Wonderful. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. I move to approve consolidated action.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved by Vince and seconded by Sarah to approve consolidated action. For the record, we do have CVHS change order and also the budget committee appointments. Is there any discussion? I will highlight a really great thing about one of our new appointees to the budget committee membership is one of our Krause School District graduates who graduated in 2015, and also really great advocate. And in their resume, actually, they highlight something that Matt mentioned earlier in this meeting about advocacy for equity in theater and all of this great work that we see from our high school students and those who graduate from our schools. So I'm really proud for this vote because we're appointing one of our own and someone who also contemplated on the impact of budgets on equity in their application. So with that, if there's any further discussion, see none, we'll call it for a vote. And we'll go with Director Conroy, what's your vote?
Yes.
Director Finger McDowell, or Vice Chair Finger McDowell, what's your vote?
Yes.
Director Jones, what's your vote?
Yes.
Director Whitebeard, what's your vote?
Yes.
Director Adams, what's your vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, passes unanimously. And we do not have consolidated information for tonight, so we will move into board member comments. Is there any board member comments or future agenda topics that you would like to suggest? Sarah.
I have a couple comments. First, so I don't forget, is good luck to Director or Chair Sammy with your defense on Monday. That's a huge thing to be taking on in the middle of all the other things you do. So wish you well. I will not come and ask hard questions. I told him he needs to plant questions because somebody who was supposed to be a sympathetic attendee asked me a question that stumped me at my master's defense, and that person was not invited to my PhD defense. It was my father. And also, thank you, Melissa, for pointing out that the principals who we've been seeing have also been doing heroic work. I have focused my questions on teachers, not because I don't recognize that, but because I don't get to talk to this teacher. I get to talk to the people who talk to the teachers. So yes, our principals have done amazing work. I've been struck with both of our meetings with our principals with the strengths that they bring working together. And the positive things that I've seen them develop that I think, I have things that I've written down, and among the papers on my desk, I have these notes of sort of positive thoughts that I've had along the way. And tonight I wrote down on a piece of paper, there are good things, because we need to remember that there are good things that we've learned during this pandemic that we can carry forward. And I think this amazing collaboration has been one of those good things. And I think that's given our schools the ability to continue the equity work and the social and racial justice work that has been, it's key to increasing our achievement gaps and opportunity gaps, increasing graduation rates that are the goals of all of us. So I just want to express my gratitude to the elementary school, middle school, and high school principals who've taken their time to talk to us for the work that they're doing together, that, or there are pieces of that are going to carry us out of this pandemic stronger rather than limping. And I think it's very touching to see.
Thank you. Next up is Jay.
I just want to say thank you to Ryan. I saw you have a new letter out to people in the community or school people regarding opening. It is one of the most perplexing problems right now. It is, we're balancing fear for our grandparents and for people over 65 like me and all that just makes me so anxious. And yet we also know there's a huge need for kids, for connections, and for school. And we are walking a hard line. So I thank you for pushing and nudging forward, and we just, keep moving ahead. I'm absolutely thrilled with the way we heard the meetings both tonight and the elementary. We have really good leaders who are hearing that same concern and are working hard. So hooray, just thank you.
Yeah, and we'll we'll bring an update to you next week in terms of what more details around the plan and the process. So we just knew that that wouldn't be tonight based on time, but we will bring more information to you before we leave for the break.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any comments from board members? Well, I want to say thank you for Vice Chair Sarah Finger McDonald for your well wishes, and for anyone of the public who's interested, it's Monday at noon, and it's about using engineering tools for decision making in emergency management, community-wide emergency management situations. And I was assured by my advisor that I have no choice or decision making around who will be asking the questions. So feel free to ask your questions and go as tough as you want. But I'm really excited, anxious, and yeah, it's exciting. So I'll let you know how it goes, and you're all welcome to attend as well. Really, I want to repeat the appreciation for our teams across the district. It's been really phenomenal. Board members, I would like you to spare maybe 2 or 3 minutes of your time within the next few days, if you may, and maybe send me Ann, Ryan, and Lindsay separately your thoughts about how the SIPS went this year compared to previous years. So this is a new way of doing it. I feel it was really a great way of doing it. So if you have any thoughts about what went well, what should change, how can we do it better? Let's reflect on that. Anytime you can do that. Of course, as it is fresh in our minds, that could be really helpful. So feel free to send me your thoughts. I'll consolidate them and share them with our leadership team, and hopefully that will inform the following years.
Yeah, for sure.
Sammy, since I wasn't here and don't have a comparison, do you just want my thoughts in general?
Sure.
Yeah, I think I would, Lou, just because
Yes,
this is, you don't have necessarily a comparison, but just what went well around it and what other ideas and suggestions you have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Any further comments or anything for the good of the order? See none. It's 9:39 and we are adjourned.